I'm going to cut this bit off off the replay. Hi, yeah, finally got it working. I think the original YouTube thing, my computer broke YouTube just for me, but it broke it. So I don't know how that happened. I'm trying to use this streaming software, you see, so I can do this cool thing where I can transition between what we're looking at, so I can kind of fade myself in and out, fade to a full screen camera. So it's a lot better. I'm going to just keep it on this one for now. But it caused a lot of problems when I chose to do that. So hopefully you can hear me okay, and there is no background fan. It is a warm day here in Manchester. It's in England. It's like 30 degrees today, which is pretty warm. Whenever I say this to people who are from warmer countries, they're like, oh, that's nothing. But the thing is, most of England was built by Victorians, and it was built for like cold temperatures. So none of our buildings are at all. We don't have like air conditioning. We don't have good circulation with air. So it's like sitting inside a little stuffy box, and it's been, the oven's turned up a bit high. So we're made for winter, not for summers. But it's really nice outside, and we're going through a bit of a heat wave. So I've got a fan on in the background. So if you can hear the fan, let me know. I'll turn it off. I will start to sweat a lot more probably if I do that. But anyway, so thanks everybody for joining. I'm glad people are gradually making it across. That's amazing. Despite technical issues, I live and learn. And what I'm going to share with you today is some stuff on my short film process. So the main aim is to talk about this short film that I've told one or two people who've kind of asked and said, hey, are you doing this? Are you? And I've just mentioned it. I've not like announced it or anything, but that I am telling people because I want to make myself actually finish it. More on that later, because obviously a lot of people, myself included, start projects and then never finish them. You take paying jobs and you do other stuff and life gets in the way. But this is the kind of thing that I got into animation for. And if I've got some time available, I want to make something if I can, and not get too fearful of that process, because it's been a while since I've done something and pushed myself creatively. So I'm trying to like get into that zone. So yeah, that's why I'm doing this as well, is also to share with other people and to help you understand like my process. And then there might be bits that you like and you want to take, other bits that might inspire you, other bits you might go, I don't think that works, that's not how I do it. And I'm open to feedback and you giving me information, and or you just kind of like taking what you want and leaving the rest. So let me switch to this screen, because this is just a sketch I was messing around with a second ago, but I'm not actually going to focus on that for now. What I'm going to focus on is the process. And so I'm just going to bring up some images, and here's one. So, oops, don't want to do that. So this is just basically a little bit. I'm going to talk about how I got to where I am and where it all started, sort of thing. So the process is, just put this to the side so I can see what I'm doing. Yeah, these are some sketches. Hopefully that's not flipping the wrong way around for you, but it doesn't matter too much if it does. So this is where this idea kind of started from. This was a fair few years ago in Brisbane in Australia. And this sketch was made from the, I think it's called the Cultural Quarter or the Cultural District. It's near the library anyway. There's like a gallery, a library. It's this really cool design of like concrete structures and buildings and things all down by the river. And this one at the top is from the roads and things. And so these are obviously not exactly how they look. This was just my kind of ideas in my sketchbook of motorways, cultural buildings and landscape. And I did a couple of color spots along the bottom here of the palettes. I didn't really have very long to draw this, so I just sketched it and then I painted this. This was the sort of the color of the stone, the concrete. And I liked the idea of the shapes. So these are like negative shapes and things that I saw, or highlights from the light hitting the different objects. And these were originally ideas for paintings, but they've stayed in my sketchbook for several years. And then often I find when I do things in sketchbooks, they just sort of sit there and they kind of just marinate a little bit. And then maybe a few years later, I'll be putting something else in that sketchbook because I'm not very militant. When I go through a sketchbook, I tend to pick them up, put them down, fill them up. In a year will go by, I'll fill that one up again, and then or finish that one, or leave a couple of pages, or I'll pick up a book and I'll be looking for a few spare pages for something or something for life drawing. So, and they're different shapes and sizes and paper. So I tend to kind of have random stuff in them. And so, yeah, I came across that, and let me go to the next one. So then jump forward. This was the end of last year. So this one was kind of a concept that I started working with this idea. I don't quite remember how this came about, but basically this character where the pieces of the character just started to float apart. And I did a tiny little storyboard down here. But this is where something started to take shape, the idea of these characters. By taking out all the design stuff, like having very simple design, it made it more about like this, what this character is going through. It's almost like a thought, you're in their brain, and it's less about like the design thing, like the clothes they wear. Because I don't want the audience to really make any judgments too much on the characters. It's more about like the concept. That might sound a bit lofty and arty, but that was a general idea. So that was where this sort of thing came about. This one's labeled disconnected stuff. The other one was labeled floating stuff. So you can see quite loose in the ideas at the moment. Then this one, number 3, idea splurge. So this was in a notebook that I often use for like journaling, morning pages sort of thing. If you've never heard of that, it's kind of like a thing where you do free writing in the morning. I don't do it every morning. At the moment, I'm not doing it at all. But if I do it, I will probably do, go through a period. It'll help me period of like a couple of months. And I'll do it every morning pretty much. And then I'll maybe start to drop to like once or twice a week. And it's like self-regulating therapy. Basically, you kind of get all your ideas out, work stuff out. You're not really meant to like read it back or really think about what you're writing. You just write the first thing that comes to your head as soon as you get up in the morning, and you do it for 3 pages. So this is kind of this idea. Sorry about my handwriting, but this was written really, really quickly, and it isn't the best in the world. This was kind of like the idea formulated one time, and I just wrote it down. I thought, I'm just going to write this because I prefer to draw things if I can. But if I've got an idea and it's kind of, I can put it into words, I find that really helps me lock down the visuals, because I often struggle with that thing of, what's the ending going to be? What's this? So I have to kind of pick a path and say, right, well, right now, this is the idea. And so I managed to do this with this, having this idea and then not being finalized with it. And then I kind of came up with an ending. And for a brief moment, like when you first get an idea, I thought, that's great. So I thought, I better write it down now. And then 2 hours later, I didn't like it. So it was like that. I didn't like it afterwards, and I changed the ending. But the ending there is slightly different to what's in the animatic. And then these are in a little moleskin notebook kind of thing. We have some sketches. These characters in this darkness here, and this sort of mechanism. This was quite steampunk at this stage. The idea of them working on this suspended sort of workbench thing, but it's like a balcony pulley thing, like you'd get a window cleaner on a high rise going up and down. And there's a few sort of notes here, things about how the pulley system will work. Because for me, I needed to have confidence in the idea, and I didn't at a few points. I was a bit like, how is this going to work? It's, I want the audience to believe what's happening, but to believe it, you have to establish that illogical logic, and then say, these are the rules of my world, and this is what's happening. And I couldn't quite get my head around what the rules were. So I was trying to work it out, and then I managed to sort of get somewhere nearby. Now I'm going to put on this animatic. I'm just going to mute it because it's I think the copyright will trigger on YouTube if I play that song. But so these were all drawn on. It's not a long animatic, and also the timing's a little off. It's quite quick, but these were all drawn on kind of note cards. Sort of a whatever size that would be, A6. Little cardboard note cards that I'd got originally for a comics project where you just do little sketches and things. But this was just me exploring the concept. And the good thing about those note cards is it's kind of for me like Post-it notes, but Post-it notes bend and fold and whatever. So I had a big stack of these things that if I do a drawing that's not very good, they're quite cheap. You can just like recycle it and draw on the other side if you want to. And then just when you're done with the project, you take all the pictures and you can rearrange them very easily. So for me, I could just put them all in different places and think, well, I'm not quite sure about that sequence right now, and then move them around. Because I started with story beats, like key scenes. So I'd go, well, I definitely want this drawing in. I definitely want this in. Where's that going to fit? Well, I'll draw it. And then I start to move them around on the table. And then gradually I work to that. So this is the current ending, is this sort of character walks through. You don't really get it from this, but it's quite a bright white light and it's very dark inside. And I went with a more like comedic sort of finish where there's all these characters outside. Everybody's been basically working inside. And then the thing that they're afraid of, which was going to be the big drop from this machine, because it's in total darkness. The fear of falling was the thing that was keeping them pulling this lever system, this tether that's taking them higher, and they have to work. Both sides are working kind of like in twos, but the idea, and I'm not quite sure if I'm getting this across yet, so I'll have to see if it gets across in the final film, is that both sides are kind of almost against each other. They could work together, and they could also lower the thing down, but they seem to keep pulling it. It's taking them higher and higher because they're kind of in this autopilot thing of like working. It's meant to be a bit of a metaphor. And obviously, if one tries to go faster than the other to be better, it puts it off kilter, and then the other one has to go faster as well, and then they kind of end up speeding each other up, and it's this sort of like mindless faster and faster and faster thing that is meant to be a metaphor for society and like consumerism and capitalism. And the idea that the pandemic in a way sort of made a step back from that, but then people don't really want to get off that hamster wheel. So when this character falls and we don't know what's going on there, the characters at the bottom walks outside, and there's all these other characters that have fallen down. Now I know if this was a podcast about this, people would be picking plot flaws left, right, and center. But it's not really about that. I need it to make enough sense, but I need to suspend the disbelief in the audience. So there's still some work to do in this, but I don't mind sharing it because maybe it'll be interesting to see the progress, see if I manage to do it, or if it's not like a full success. Again, it's about the process more than just the end result. So that's why I'm sharing this. So this was a sketch that I did. I did a sketch this was on pencil on paper, and then I took a photo of it and inverted it, which is, why you've got these funky colors. But I thought it looked quite cool. And this is where the darkness idea started to really come through, that, maybe I could invert the line and get that kind of nice look. These are some sketches that were done digitally. And this is when I started to decide to change the colors of the characters, potentially, definitely the head shapes, because you might have noticed in the animatic, when I put it into a sequence, I was confused by which character we were looking at. There's a bit where one of the characters looks at the other when there's like meant to be a moment of slight connection, as should we keep doing this sort of thing, and then no, they just carry on as normal. It's like the almost like the all is lost moment in screenwriting that people talk about. So this was a head shape change, and I start to experiment with shading here. There's a similar sort of thing with these characters drawn with almost like a glowing line. This was done in Procreate, I think, potentially. Yes, I think so. And because I've been drawing on paper with gouache, watercolor, and then digitally in Procreate, Toon Boom, But I don't really mind what tool I use as long as, because they're all kind of similar. It's more about getting that brush effect. Like I really like the chalky sort of nature of this blue character here. And I liked the almost golden glowing line of this one here. So there's some quick poses. I was still a little bit, like for me, I always struggle. I don't know about you, if you've made any films or if you've made any work yourself. I always find it quite difficult when I am doing this sort of thing to really decide on like a direction and say, right, this is exactly how it's going to look. This is how I'm going to go with this. Okay, so I'm just checking something. I didn't know if my audio had gone off. So next. So this was a sequence that I started animating on my iPad, actually. It was just a simple sequence. And what basically that was just the roughs. And then I started to put some more animation stuff in there. So you can see the difference. It's quite loose. Now, at one point, I was just going to leave it at that sort of level of complexity in terms of how many frames and drawings I was putting in. And then I thought, well, I'll just animate it because it's for me. I just want to play around with this idea of actually doing full animation. So this is on 2s. It's quite a complicated thing that I don't know why I started with this shot. If I was doing it again, maybe I'd start with a different and easier shot. I guess I kind of wanted to try and work out what's the deal going on. Like, how are we going to get this? Am I going to be able to make it believable that they're pulling this sort of like rope, this tether thing up? And I've got to get the two characters working together, make it feel like it's got some resistance to it, but it's partly being powered by the machine, which is meant to be like the metaphor for like the bigger brother sort of the subconscious push. I don't know. And then these are some bits I've started. I've not finished this one at this point, but on the orangey characters with the square heads. So they're in the sort of a stage of 4s on 4s. Again, I think that could work fine. But there's not too many sequences where it's fully animated, you see. So the blue characters on the left, it may not get to that point. And if it does, then again, I'm not too worried because there's not too much animation to do. There's a few like sort of slower points. This is where everything's moving. So these were some experiments I did with watercolor. Gouache. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that's how I say it. And just was trying out some pigment stuff and just wanted to like clear my desk and not be on a computer for a bit. So just play around. I really liked the texture on the head and the shading, because one of the things is that I don't want it to be too flat. I want to add a little bit of three-dimensionality to it if I can. There's a few more experiments here. The one on the left, it's on my screen, with the outline, the bluey green character. That one, I thought I'll try some outline on it, and I was not really keen on the outline. The shading, it's got like a 5 o'clock shadow in the center one, and then the one where I've outlined very thin but done some shading lines, I didn't really like that too much either. So I went on to this kind of thing where it was almost with an outline, and almost like if you were to do thumbprints and things, and then you draw faces on, you might have seen that sort of thing, or you draw a little watercolor blob and then you draw a face on it, or draw a character from it. I quite like this. The challenge would be, because I was thinking about maybe moving away from traditional hand-drawn and then going back to kind of cutout. Oh, great. I'm glad it's not flipped. It's flipping for me for some reason in YouTube Studio, so that's why I'm a bit confused, but thanks for confirming. So yeah, this one here, that I quite like the couple of lines to shade along the bottom here. And this kind of idea of using cutouts and replaceables and having as the head changes, it changes like, its actual watercolory sort of pigment, and then drawing the face on. So, if the angle's sort of set, just draw different expressions. And then when it changes, have like a sequence of heads that change. So that's kind of combining traditional media, hand-drawn animation, and cutout animation all together. The challenge, as you see in my notes, is how to get the body working, because the complexity of the stuff going on there is going to be pretty tough. So I've just been experimenting this morning with the idea of creating like a texture, which you can see here as like a texture test. This isn't the right color, but I can change that afterwards. And, maybe messing around with that and having it mapped to the arms at different angles. I'm not really worried about the texture itself having to boil as much, like kind of keep changing, because that won't be the main focal area. Yes. Okay, so we're on this one now. So these were some just circles of like different experiments with the ways to paint the heads. So you can see there's a few different ones here. I went a little bit crazy on the one on the right. It looks like it's all bashed up. The one here, I think preference-wise, this sort of thing, maybe even this, because the shadow, or even this is a really nice, probably one of these two is my preference. This is very subtle. It's also like a very hard light. It's like they're being spotlit, which I quite like the idea of, that they are kind of they're being watched, but it's just by a light. So it's like being judged by, something that's intangible, like judged by themselves or whatever. This one is a little bit more milky-ish, kind of dreamlike. So maybe not so much that one, but we'll see. So that's where I'm up to with the testing. And I basically set this up so that I can do another sketch for you and show you my process of this is using Toon Boom, how I sketch in the software and, erase things and then kind of clean stuff up as I go, working out ideas. This is pretty messy. It's not the greatest drawing right now, but again, to show you that it doesn't turn out perfect. Try and give other people confidence that like you don't have to be judging yourself, comparing yourself to somebody else. It's just like your process, and the fact that you're doing the process is the good thing. So I'm just going to transition back to this. I do like that. That is fun. So the thing I wanted to say is thanks for listening to that, me rambling on. It's great to see a few people kind of like engaging and hanging around and listening, and hopefully it's useful. I'd like to invite any questions. I also have my set of questions to answer anyway. So I'll just put them up. Got some really good questions here. But hopefully the sound is good, because there's all kinds of stuff like the fan going on in the background, and then I've got a fan on my computer kicking in because it's roasting, and just madness. But hopefully this microphone is doing its job and cutting out some of the background noise. So if you do have any questions about what you saw, or questions about animating, short film making, ideas generation, just drop them in the chat. Hopefully the delay is not too bad. I think it's okay because I'm seeing things come through, but just change that to live chat. So let me answer a couple of questions whilst you're all having a think, and maybe this is useful to you. So just to start with, this is a bit of an ambiguous one, but what do you think are the characteristics of a successful short film versus an unsuccessful? Now, that's really interesting, because for me, the idea of a successful short film, sorry, I'm just reading a comment. Oh, great. Okay, let's on one side goes to make it stop. Are you talking about the short itself, like about the actual narrative of the short film, the animatic so far? Oh, doing some key bits about it, animating some key parts. Let me know about that anyway, and I'll just carry on answering this question. So successful short film versus unsuccessful. For me, like that could be, you could take that as like a commercial aspect and say, like, has it made money? Have I made my money back? I think that is the death of creativity myself. It's very difficult, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm wrestling with it all the time. Somebody will offer me some work and I'll like have to wrestle with the idea of considering making something that is art, that not for commercial gain is work as well. Like if you want to be an artist, like when you were a kid, you didn't think about that sort of thing. You were just like, I'm an artist, and you didn't even think about the link to the financial value. Whereas when you've got bills to pay, or even if you don't have that much financial strain, you're so conditioned to think like that it starts to become something that is a real mental block for me. Maybe not so much for you, depending on how you've been brought up and your surroundings and so on. But I find that difficult. So in terms of success versus unsuccessful, there's obviously the obvious one is financial, which a lot of people would say that's successful versus unsuccessful. The pitfalls of that for me are that if you start to put that, and this is like, look at any studio that's been at the creative pinnacle and then have gradually watered themselves down, or anyone who's kind of struggling. I mean, Pixar is a fantastic example because they had to kind of like do this deal with Steve Jobs to finance some of the very earliest stuff. They weren't, Toy Story wouldn't have even got made if that hadn't have been a thing and Steve Jobs hadn't seen a vision there for it. But I'm pretty sure he did all right out of it financially. And then obviously when Disney got involved, there's a compromise. You saw remakes of like, well, not remakes, but the sort of the pre-sold franchise, so to speak, of the cars and then planes and all these different things. I'm not saying they're bad films, but it's not, like nobody wants to be making the same thing as an artist. I know studios have their staples, their things that they keep making, but the artists I know from speaking to them, they don't like doing that stuff, but it pays the bills. So it's the balance between the two. And I think the same comes from short filmmaking. So I know I've gone on a big tangent there, but the idea of doing it for yourself is that I think you need to really find something that you can do for yourself. Like you can self-fund, and I don't just mean money, I mean time. Like you've got to think about animation takes loads of time if you're not careful. I mean, it takes enough time anyway. So you want to make sure that you can do it and it's not going to take you 6 years or 10 years or whatever else. And you're just going to hate it by the end of it, or it's not enough for you. You want to be making more stories. Maybe you're somebody who really loves just the craft and the animating process and all the detail. If that's for you, that's fantastic. Do that thing and take years to make it, or make lots of shorts. But if you like storytelling and new stories and testing out your storytelling, which is more closer to what I think I'm into at this stage in my life, then maybe I don't want to go too in depth. Like I'm making films that are 2 minutes long maximum, and periods of time where I can just take a chunk and go, right, I'm going to get this thing done like I am trying to do right now, and give myself the momentum to follow it through. So for me, that would be, it's successful if you've managed to have a good think before you start and then follow through on that, and you keep coming back to kind of an American startup term, but like your North Star. Like you kind of pick, it's like going back to your compass and saying, what, are we still heading north right now? Are we still following the start? Because you need to kind of make sure you come back to the reason you started it. Otherwise you'll get lost, and then you might end up going, hang on a minute, this is not what I wanted to do. I'm not enjoying this anymore. Knowing how to put down a project if you don't enjoy it, I think, is important as well. I know that's difficult, but wrap it up, finish it however you want to. But yeah, that's a whole kettle of fish on its own. So yeah, making your sort of outlining your stuff at the start and then deciding what those goals are. Like for me, this project for me is trying to get back into short film making and sort of a link with traditional animation again, like fall in love with that again. I think the reason I thought about making a short film again was because I pulled out my old animation desk from university and I was like, sort of a small tear. No, but it's just kind of that thing, that link of drawing on paper again. So I was like, oh, maybe I could do some stuff like this. And then go from there and see, maybe this project I'm going to do this one I'm going to push the storytelling more, this one I'm going to try and mix media. And then you start to get motivated and be like, do I want to be a filmmaker? How can I do this? And that leads me nicely onto the next question. How many short films have you made throughout your career? Talk about past personal projects, how your mindset towards short filmmaking has changed throughout the years, motivations for making personal projects and why? That's really good. I love that question. So I've not made loads of short films. When I think about making them, it's like start to finish. Okay, this is complete. Unfortunately, I'm like one of those people who starts lots of projects and doesn't quite finish them. I've got loads that are nearly finished, and my wife, like, it's still weird saying that, we've been married like nearly a year, but she said just like finish that one, because she's not an animator. So when she looks at it, she's like, it's nearly done, just finish it. And then I sort of like stress out about it. I can't just finish it. Like, I need to do it, and then make excuses. And then I'm like, oh, actually, I could just finish that. So there's a few that I want to try and finish and wrap up just for having it finished. There's a couple I started and they were way too ambitious and I just gave up. But I kind of went into my shell a little bit with making short films, because I was really confident and like up for it when I was at university, and I was like, I'm going to make loads of short films and this is going to be my thing. I'm going to be a filmmaker. And then I got sort of very blinkered into trying to make it into the animation industry, get a job and things. So all the things I did started to be geared towards showreel and how can I make me look good on my showreel, and will this look like an animation project at a studio, and does it look like I'm worth this kind of money, and will I get a job? So all those things took over. And then I sort of like lost my confidence through not actually making stuff so much. Like I used to do sketchbook stuff, but I stopped sharing things as much. Just, I don't mean on social media, I mean just like people seeing it. And if you feel like you're getting rusty creatively, I think that's, you really easily start to like rust up, and then it's quite difficult because there's quite a fear of putting yourself out there sometimes. You fear the judgment, and maybe because you judge other people, sometimes you kind of look at stuff. I know I've done it in the past. You look at stuff and you go, that's not very good, or I don't like that. It's like you go to an art gallery, there'll be several things there you don't like, and you're afraid of putting yourself out there and people not liking it or judging you. But as I've got older, my mindset has changed, because I've started to care less about what other people think, and just most people are, I'd say 99% people in the world are like, do have good intentions, and if you actually spoke to them and met them face to face when they're not having a stressful day or whatever, they're just like you. Everyone's human, so that kind of helps me to think like that, because then I'm like, think positive thoughts, and then you don't get so scared. It's when you start to get into a negative headspace, it becomes quite difficult to get creative, which I think is why so many people, when lockdown happened, they were like, I'm going to do loads of projects, and then they did nothing, because basically the world was like seemingly quite negative on the outside, and therefore it just influenced and sapped, the sort of their saboteur got involved and said, nah, you're not making this. It's going to be rubbish. Everyone's going to hate it. And, or what's the point? That's the worst one. So in terms of my projects, I made a short film at university, 6 minutes long, that was like a bit of a slog, but I'm still impressed when I think about it that I actually managed to do it. It was all on my own and all hand-drawn on paper, scanned, hand-colored, all that sort of thing. But that was a big learning curve. And then I did a group project where I got a load of other people to join in, and we did little segments. And I had other ideas written. I did about 2/3, no, maybe 3/4 of an animated film when I was in Australia, which was based on something I saw in New Orleans in America. So I was backpacking at the time, which was one of my most creative kind of periods. I was very like positive, enthusiastic, had loads of ideas, loads of things I wanted to do, because I was seeing all this stuff, and I saw a whole different side of the world that I'd never seen before. So that was really cool. And then from there, like lots of little projects and short films, but mainly commercial. I mean, when I say I haven't done many, it's because I don't count the commercial ones, but I've made loads of little kind of ad spots and hand-drawn things and other bits and bobs, but and contributed to a lot of TV shows and so on. But that I don't really count them, obviously, because they're not shorts on their own. So personal projects, they kind of moved away from that and became like drawing projects, illustration, a few comic things, comics. And then, I made a short monkey and penguin film just to try and like do something again in Toon Boom. It was all right, but it just, for me, I felt like, oh, this is the same as what I always do. So I finished it and then I practically hated it straight away. So I want to try and do something that looks a bit different and like feels slightly different. And yeah, so I do have that kind of like internal battle with, positively following through with things, but I feel in a better place with it. So I'm excited to kind of be working on this and chatting about it live on the internet. So motivations are just, I think it came a little bit of like a thing as I got a bit older. I started to, I've been working in animation like 15 years now. So it was something where I'd done that thing. I'd achieved that. I work in animation now. And then I left doing animation work at studios because I wanted to try something new, and then set up Adam's Animation Academy. And that's doing well. So then I'm kind of like, okay, that's 5 years this year I've been doing that. And it's not the first time it's kind of came to me or come to me, but I started to go, well, what am I doing? Like, what do I want to do with my life? What do I really want to do? And I remembered 10-year-old Adam going, I want to make film. I want to tell stories and tell my stories. And when I see stuff, like if you haven't seen it, the video where I go to a film festival and watch some animation, I'm buzzing in that situation. I love it. And whenever I've been to Annecy Animation Festival in France, or any other festival, I always come back super inspired, and I'm absolutely flying, and I'm ready for, to make my own films. So that gut instinct drives me and makes me go, no, do you know what? Stop second guessing yourself, like follow through and do those things, because that's what you love and you get a buzz out of it. And if it doesn't pay any money, well, okay, you'll have to balance that with something else. So let me have a look. Maybe I'll share some of those things in a future video, future live stream, some of those projects, because it'd be interesting for you to see what they look like and the development. Balancing studio, a couple of questions around this, like studio work, personal work, and basically your own passion projects and normal work. It isn't easy. The thing you have to watch out for is burnout. Don't push yourself too much, like full-time job. And I mean, somebody I was speaking to recently was saying they have a full-time hotel job and they're still trying to study this animation, 3D animation, and they are trying to make a short film in Toon Boom. And it's too much. You'll burn out. Some people can do it if you're really enthused at the time, but you will burn out. You will get to a point where you're like, I can't do this anymore. And if you don't stop there and you keep going, you might finish it, but what will happen is I had burnout earlier this year. It's kind of terrifying because you'll lose your enthusiasm for doing anything. You just totally zapped, and you just need to take time off. It's like your brain and your body saying, absolutely no, like I'm not doing this anymore. It's too much and I need a break. And so you need to take time off. I just want to shout out the Retakes podcast as well, which talks about it's to, I think, British women who are really good animators, and they talk about, it's quite a new podcast, but there's one about burnout, and it's amazing to hear. Nobody talks about it. It's like a bit of a taboo, to kind of say to take time off to do things that you are enthused about, your own projects, and how much time to take off. Like, we're talking not just a week, 2 weeks, sometimes it's months, and months without doing anything and not feeling guilty for it. That's difficult to do. So be prepared. Like, that's the danger if you go too hard, is that you'll burn yourself out. So you need to find this sustained thing. So if you are going to do a personal project, how am I going to do that a little bit at a time? How much can I realistically do? Like a couple of hours a week, compound interest of that over a year, it's going to be a huge amount of work. But the difficulty is showing up to do those couple of hours a week. So don't chuck something else on top of that because you think, I could take on more. Take it easy, give yourself that creative space to do nothing. Okay, I'm chatting a lot today, but no doodling. Let's have a look. I'm going to do this. I'm going to switch myself whilst I answer the next question. Let's see how smart I am. I'm going to transition to this. You're going to see my head now because I'm going to be looking at the screen. But I'm going to answer this one whilst sketching, if my brain can manage to do the two. Okay, so What have we got next? Group projects. Yeah, 4 questions about group projects. Well, 3, one about individual work, but it's kind of the same sort of thing. So yeah, basically the idea of balancing working in a group and how to decide if you're going to do something in a group. It's tough. I've always struggled with that, to be honest. I really struggle with the idea of doing group work because kind of I'm a self-confessed control freak at core. I try my best to let go of that, but I do find it difficult to do stuff with other people, just because, one, you've got to get the right amount of enthusiasm amongst the group, and then you've also got to, if you're doing loads and then somebody else is kind of slacking off a bit, you can get a bit mad about that. Maybe this drawing and talking at the same time is going to be harder than I imagined. But yeah, it's difficult to do. So you kind of have to find people who share your values, your passion, and not bite off more than you can chew. Or you need to be agreeing like how much you're going to do, and then try and do maybe a small project to start with. I worked with one of my friends before on a project, and we fell out massively, just because he was like, other stuff was going on for me, and then he was like full on in the project, and it's super hard to work together. Like they say, you shouldn't do projects, you shouldn't work with your spouse or whatever. You shouldn't like run a business. Yeah, I think it's difficult, but I think it's also the future. I mean, if you think about all animation takes ages, and all films and TV are made in groups, and not many people do it alone because it's hard and it's quite lonely. So I don't think it's worth just giving up because of that. You just need to make sure that you find the right people to test it out with. Maybe do some really short little kind of loops or something like that first, really short films. And I know we've got one going on which was kind of kicked off through the academy ex-students, who basically just said, I said to people, anybody got any stuff they want to do? Somebody came forward, Declan, and said, I've got this idea. Great, let's try and do that. Nice and simple. But it's still taking its time to do, because people have different things going on in their lives. Communicating online through text and everything else is quite difficult. Sometimes people get they might get the wrong end of the stick. I mean, that's one of the things that, by the way, if you don't know that term, it's an English term, I think. It just means getting the wrong idea. Like, I say something, you think I'm being mean, but I'm actually just trying to be supportive or something. It's lost in translation a little bit through typing things, sending messages. And that makes it tough. So you need to try and test it out, small achievable projects, build up from there. And again, it's a marathon, not a sprint, as far as I'm concerned. Like, if you want to build a team who are going to work on stuff, you need to kind of like take your time and be able to compromise, because that's a really important skill to learn in animation. You need to know when to put your foot down, and then when to and say your piece, and then when to just go, no, do you know what, I'm just going to breathe and go with this, and then maybe it'll be better. So that's something to really foster. I struggle with it, and I get over enthusiastic and then really push it, and it can put other people off, because I'm like, let's do this thing. And yeah, so that's something to watch out for. Can you think of any films that's particularly surprising? Maybe, I mean, I'm reading that all wrong anyway. But any films that I thought were really good that kind of stuck with me, and can be years ago. Well, there's one that I watched that Aardman made called The Pierce Sisters. I'm going to write it here. And this film, I thought that was really good. I really liked that. I can't, off the top of my head, think of many others that I'm like this film. I can't remember the name of it now. I think it's called Old Fang. Old Fang. It was I think maybe Cartoon Saloon made it. Old Fang. Yeah, Old Fang. I really loved that. I thought that was great. Right, let me try and finish this. I'm going to get rid of that Pierce Sisters. So any other questions or anything? I'm just going to do another few minutes or so and finish this off. Let's see what we can do with this. Feeling like a really weird pose here. Now, one of the things I am doing with this this short is not bothering with mouths, so just going to try and keep it to the eyes and the nose. Okay, so Darren asks in the chat, ever thought about having a comp or compositing? Compositing, I think you mean, not competition, I'm imagining. Comp class. So yes, actually, if it is compositing you're talking about. It's one of the requested things that a lot of people have been asking for training-wise is compositing. And I recently completed some for a studio. And yeah, I have like loads of materials based around it. So I'm probably going to make a compositing course, very similar setup to the other ones that I do. And then I'm going to go from there and just sort of, it'll be a normal thing, maybe like 4 weeks or something, like 5 weeks. You can get feedback and technical things. There's a lot to learn in Toon Boom around like lighting as well, which we can do, which is really cool. I might do a specialist lighting and effects kind of thing. Again, I don't know everything about particles and everything about lighting. There's new things that Toon Boom add all the time, but that might be something for the future. And then I'd like to also, I'm just going to throw it out there whilst I'm chatting. There's an idea of doing like a weekend workshop where basically it'd be online, but it'd be where there's little check-ins. So we all meet in the morning, just like, I don't know, the group, we chat for a bit like this. And we have a little project, a creative project that I set you, and then we'll go off. And it's basically, we'll meet back again later on. And there's going to be several chats throughout the day. So depending on your time zone, it doesn't matter where you're at. You can share stuff. Other people can share theirs. It's the idea like this is to kind of foster a creative environment and help people move their projects along, whatever they are. So you might just want to get back into drawing or maybe a little bit of animation just over a weekend. Have a creative weekend, something where you make some art, you make something around animation illustration. And it's just there to give yourself a little bit of an accountable group with some tips, professional feedback. And, so that's just something that I'm thinking about doing as like a little test thing, a little test course, a weekend workshop. And the idea is to keep it nice and cheap, just to help people, move things along. And then from there, I might build something more specific. I am just going to show you this little tip. It's a technical Toon Boom tip, but when I'm drawing like this, I'll generally just chuck another drawing on top, turn on the little light box, and then click the top light tool up here and adjust the wash. Because for me, it's like putting another sheet of paper on top of it, and then you can go in and start to tidy this up a bit more, tie this drawing down. So maybe a little bit, and maybe tilt the head down a bit more. Okay, so just a few more minutes, and then I shall say see you later. I'm going to leave this sweat box of a room. And yeah, but thanks very much, everybody, for joining, listening in. It's been cool to hear your comments. One of the things I like about just drawing straight into software that I'm going to animate in like this is it stops. There's not so much of a gap between the point of, how I'm going to make this thing. So now I'm just kind of working out. If you like to feather lines like this when you're drawing something, but you want them to be connected, in the tool properties in Toon Boom, there's this little hammer. It's the line builder mode. This is really cool. So you can draw, and it will connect them up. So that's all one line now. That's quite a nice little one, line builder. draw your final lines. So there we go, a little bit of difference between this one and this one. Okay, so let me jump myself back to being full screen. There we go. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. I'm going to call that end of the stream. And yeah, if you have any other questions that jump to mind, you can find me on Instagram or on YouTube, or just pop it in the comments and I'll see it. Or if you've got my email, drop me an email. And hopefully that was useful to you all and you found it fun. So I'll see you around next time. I'm going to be doing these streams throughout the summer, or the UK summer, which is probably going to last about 2 weeks and then it'll be over. But no, my main initial plan was to do them through July. So we'll see, maybe like 4 or 5 sessions. We'll see a natural sort of end to them. So if you've got any ideas for topics, anything you'd like to see more of, maybe you want to see me go through a compositing scene or something like that, let me know. And I'll go from there. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. See you again soon.